At 776-1452.
The following is an exclusive presentation of News Radio KMAN, your home for K-State athletics. This is Wildcat Insider with the Mercury sports editor Tim Everson and KMAN sports director Mitch Fortner.
Mitch Fortner here solo in studio with you here today on an abbreviated edition of Wildcat Insider on News Radio KMAN. Across the glass is Gavin Hyatt. We're going to be with you for about 28 minutes. First of all, shout out to K-State baseball. 4-0 for the first time in 3 seasons. However, that year they started 4-0 was a sweep over Stephen F. Austin. I think this 4-0 start is way more satisfying than it was 3 years ago. Especially when your Badcats are averaging 14.25 runs per game so far. That's a hell of a start for the Badcats. The closest game was today. Basically felt like a midweek, like a Wednesday game, with the Cats winning 11-8 over Air Force. That game heard just a few moments ago right here on News Radio KMAN. Now they get ready for Arlington, Texas, starting on Friday against number 7 Arkansas. I suppose we can open up the phone lines and the text lines. That phone number is 785-537-1350. If there is a question or comment about, of course, what we're about to address once again. I did about 30 minutes last night, around 7:30. That was before Gene Taylor's press conference to the media about the firing of Jerome Tang. Let's start there. Jerome Tang fired, no longer the K-State men's basketball coach at K-State. I'll have Power Cat Game Day tomorrow. I'm going to be joined by Tim Everson and Mason Voth. We're going to roundtable this thing for a couple of segments because there's a lot of layers now to this, which now apparently it could get messy. And I got a feeling, I got a hunch that Jerome Tang isn't going to be settled with a settlement, if that makes sense. He's not going to settle for a settlement. Based on the words coming out just a few moments ago that were tweeted out by Pete Thamel. Pete Thamel from ESPN, who's a college football writer, says Jerome Tang is retaining Tom Mars, Bennett Spire, not sure how to say his last name, on the for-cause firing. Mars told ESPN, if K-State's president and AD really think the school was embarrassed by recent events, that's nothing compared to the embarrassment that both of them are about to experience. That's a hell of a quote. I mean, that to me sounds like Jerome Tang is about to throw the toughest defense he's thrown out there since he took over the job at K-State. Like it's balls to the wall, guns a-blazing, coming after K-State for this $18.675 million. But Jerome Tang, again, fired for cause. Let me give you the language once again about where K-State feels this firing was justified. And again, this was Gene Taylor last night during his press conference to the local media, addressing Jerome Tang being fired for cause.
There's language in his contract that addresses certain things that could potentially bring embarrassment. Basically, his comments about the student athletes and the negative reaction to those comments from a lot of sources, both nationally and locally, is where I thought we needed to make the decision.
Now, just to go over the contract, what it says, there's multiple clauses that can come into effect with this firing. That is, of course, reaction to what Gene Taylor there alluded to is this comment that I'm going to replay for you here once again about Jerome Tang. He was embarrassed. The university was embarrassed about his team's effort in a 29-point loss to Cincinnati.
This was embarrassing. These dudes do not deserve to wear this uniform. There will be very few of them in it next year. I'm embarrassed for the university. I'm embarrassed for our fans, our student section. It is just ridiculous. We got practice at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we will get this thing right.
That was from his press conference, and Now, there's a Clause 9, there's Clause 10, Clause 11 in this section of his contract that states specific duties and responsibilities. I keep referring to this 9th clause of the section that states conducting themselves at all times in a manner of consistent with the position of head coach and instructor of student athletes, and an ambassador and representative of K-State athletics and the university. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but ever since this was out, and Gene Taylor spoke to the media, this has nationally exploded. I keep looking over to my left because SportsCenter is about to talk about this. This is a national headline. They're going to dedicate a number of moments on SportsCenter to talk about this. Seth Greenberg is pissed off about this. Fran Fraschilla is pissed off about this because to them, and maybe not so much Fran. I mean, Fran is a former coach, so is Seth Greenberg. But they're both like, they feel this is a extremely soft look by K-State. That this is K-State punishing a head coach for being a coach. And it's become more than just wins and losses. It's that Jerome Tang was basically, let me put this correctly here, stating that wasn't allowed to be a coach, you're not allowed to be critical of your own players anymore. It's not them all saying this. It's been nationally just kind of portrayed like K-State is in the wrong here for the firing for cause. Now, I am no expert legally to say, oh yeah, this thing we'll go to court and K-State's going to be fine. Look, this is basically how this is going to be laid out. K-State is not wanting to pay $18.6 million. The national media doesn't completely understand what's going on here. It's more than just a firing for cause. Look, I'm not the first to admit this, but that Jerome Tang buyout was crazy. $18.7 million is a crazy buyout. But this was a fan-led extension 2 years ago when Jerome Tang, and I still think this is more just his camp putting out the threat of him leaving for Arkansas to get another extension after a subpar season. So he gets the extension. We all begged for it. We all wanted it to happen. Didn't want to see Jerome Tang go anywhere. We did not want to see Jerome Tang leave. He gets the extension. $18.7 million buyout is crazy. Jerome Tang still said what he said. If K-State instead this season was not 10-15 and instead was 17-8, and they had a really bad day against Cincinnati and it was a 29-point loss and Jerome Tang still said what he said, I don't think he gets fired over that. I'm sure Gene Taylor was already working with donors to get this buyout ready to go. But things had gotten so bad. It had gotten so bad. If you want to talk about the embarrassment part of this, you're still probably more embarrassed about the losses to Cincinnati, to Iowa State, to Kansas. But the way Jerome Tang was talking at press conferences, it felt like he was begging to be fired. Blaming the NCAA for, that's the reason why we can't win is because the rules keep changing and I don't have a plan. That was one of them. That just kind of drove me nuts about the lack of accountability. Fast forward to what he said after the Cincinnati game. And there have been incidents that have kept adding up to just it felt like it's a program out of control with off-the-floor issues, players being dismissed from the team, arrests taking place. Let's not pretend that this hasn't been 3 years of a timeline-filled program, both on and off the floor, of major issues. Let's not forget about the Iowa State thing. Another thing that was embarrassing was basically accusing Iowa State of spying on their huddles. Like, it's been years and years of embarrassing things adding up, and K-State could argue potentially that this was the final nail in the coffin of criticizing the student athletes, saying they don't deserve to wear the uniform, and, so on and so forth. Now, to me, my initial reaction to that was maybe the right message. Maybe. I kind of liked it at first. But when it was all said and done and the dust settled, I did not like the representation there. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was bad representation of K-State. I really did. But grounds for firing, it was still a bit of a surprise to me. But does this hold up? Obviously, this is going to court. What K-State wants to do here is they do not want to pay the $18.6 million. They want this to get settled. You know, the nearest, I say the nearest, it wasn't that long ago, but I'm saying nearest based on proximity to where Manhattan is at Wichita State with Greg Marshall, when he was accused of, by players, he was accused of verbal and physical abuse. Greg Marshall gets fired for cause. He's got a sizable buyout over his head that he wants. Wichita State fires him. They wanted to settle this. They did not want to pay the full buyout, and they ended up paying half of the buyout. I think it was a $15 million buyout. I think they paid $7 million to Greg Marshall, but it wasn't just that part of the settlement. Another major part of this was that Wichita State did not have to pay it out at once. They were able to pay it off in like 6 years. I think it was 6 years they were able to pay it off. So basically, does K-State want Jerome Tang to become the Bobby Bonilla of college basketball? That's the Mets player that's being paid $1.2 million per year for like 24 years. That was the Mets trying to get out of paying a $6 million lump sum. And now they're paying $1 million plus a year for a very long time. And of course, it wouldn't be that crazy, but apparently Coach Tang wants to fight this. To me, this is business. I don't blame K-State at all for trying to not pay this entire buyout. It's a crazy amount of money that should have never been a buyout. So K-State dug themselves a sizable hole. Now they're trying to climb out of it by a firing for cause is a legal action. K-State knew, Gene Taylor knew, his lawyers knew, Richard Linton knew that by firing Jerome Tang for cause, that Tang was not going to waste any time lawyering up if he didn't have them already. He's got his people lawyering up and going after K-State for his $18.6 million buyout. Yeah, the jersey thing, what, didn't Bill Snyder do that one? Or maybe it was Ron Prince. Took the names off the uniforms. To me, that wasn't a big deal at all, honestly. The players did the scout. I mean, that whole Houston game was just crazy. I mean, from the behind the scenes, I mean, it really wasn't the game at all. It was just the behind the scenes just was crazy. But anyway, going back to this, what could be this potential settlement is where we're currently standing right now is basically Jerome Tang said, I'll take the $18.6 million. K-State then counters with, we'll pay you nothing and fire you for cause. The negotiations are officially underway. We're now going back and forth to determine what can we settle on, how many years can we pay this out, and how do we move on as quickly as we can without not have to be paying all these court fees. Having to pay these lawyers a whole bunch of money, which I could see Jerome Tang's lawyers being like, look, we'll represent you. We're looking to win. You only pay us if we win. That kind of thing. You know, it's like a class action lawsuit type of thing. That's what the lawyers do. They take the risk of agreeing to represent you, and they only get paid if you win. That's why they always push for settlement. You know, let's get this thing paid out. Let's get our cash. Let's move on. But Jerome Tang has the personality that, reading that quote from Pete Thamel that came out about 45 minutes ago, not a shocker at all. And I'll repeat this. If K-State president and AD really think the school is embarrassed by recent events, nothing compared to the embarrassment that both of them are about to experience. I mean, that to me is that you thought Jerome Tang was pissed after the Cincinnati loss. Now he's pissed because he's not getting his $18.6 million right away. After I felt like for weeks he was trying to get himself fired by the things he was saying in post-game press conferences. He was really firing up the fan base, pissing people off more than just wins and losses. This became more than wins and losses. This became a lot more than just Jerome Tang falling from grace after winning the Naismith Coach of the Year award and getting to the Elite Eight. It became a lot more than that when Tang, week after week, was embarrassing K-State in press conferences. Now, I want to take a break. And when we come back, we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about the things that K-State has done since this firing that I'm not a big fan of, that maybe Jerome Tang could use against K-State. Maybe. That's coming up next.
You're listening to Wildcat Insider.
WTC Fiber is a proud partner of K-State Athletics, and now we're offering fast, reliable internet to all of Manhattan. With speeds up to 4 gig over our 100% fiber network, you'll get the performance you need without the hassle. No contracts, no data caps, no installation fees. Secure your connection today at WTCKS.com. That's WTCKS.com. Go Cats!
At Victory Clinic, we know that you want to do more than overcome depression. You want to live your life with purpose and joy. We understand that the pain of depression is real, but some things are worth fighting for. I'm Dr. Christy Clark from Victory Clinic in Junction City and Manhattan, and I believe that you can come home to yourself again. TMS and Spravato are both safe and extremely effective alternatives to medicines. Ready to learn more about hope for healing? Visit victoryclinics.com, or we're available by phone or text. You can be victorious over depression, anxiety, or PTSD because you are worthy of wellness.
Hey fans, I know you'd do anything for a win on game day and an ice-cold Bud Light. Because whether you're tailgating in the parking lot or parked on the couch, sitting on your lucky stool at the bar, or standing in the fan section all game long, the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light turns a win into a win-win. And there's nothing easier to enjoy than that. Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Bud Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Is it allergies, a virus, or even worse, the flu? Flu season is upon us and life doesn't slow down just because you're sick. KStat Urgent Care is here to keep life moving. If you're not feeling well, be sure to get in line at kstaturgentcare.com. Flu shots are now available. Plus, they accept most insurance, including TRICARE and United Health. So if you need help with a non-life-threatening condition, head to KStat, where they've been committed to serving you for over 15 years. Now open weekdays until 8 p.m. KStat Urgent Care, located on Hayes Drive, just east of Walmart.
I'm Gavin Hyatt with a Wildcat Insider Sports Update brought to you by Bottle Cap Sports Bar. After a 1-11 Big 12 start and controversial comments after last week's loss to Cincinnati, K-State on Sunday fired Jerome Tang, deciding to part ways with the basketball coach after less than four full seasons. In doing so, K-State said the firing was for cause, claiming that Tang had violated the terms of his employment contract by publicly criticizing his players for lackluster effort in a home loss by 29 to the Bearcats. Athletics Director Gene Taylor and K-State confirmed the move in a statement Sunday evening.
There's language in his contract that addresses certain things that could potentially bring embarrassment. Basically his comments about the student athletes and the negative reaction to those comments from a lot of sources, both nationally and locally, is where I thought we needed to make the decision.
Coach Tang was allowed to address the players Sunday morning before leaving the players with many emotions. The losses have added up in recent years. After an Elite 8 run in his first season, Tang was a combined 45-47 overall and 18-32 in Big 12 play the last 3 seasons. K-State will host Baylor on Tuesday in Bramlage, PowerCat Game Day at 6, with tip at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, tomorrow's night's going to be a little weird, right? I mean, wondering what the crowd's going to be like. First of all, the game is irrelevant, right? Because this is now just a formality. We are all moving on past this season. Whatever happens in these last 7 games minimum, the rest of the year, wins and losses are just, we're just playing out this season, hoping for a little bit of pride at the end of this year. Baylor coming in, they're having a down season. They're 13-12. I mean, this is only the second non-20-win season that Baylor will probably have in the last 14 years. So, I would doubt there's not really any heat on Scott Drew. There's rumors going around right now that Scott Drew's looking to bring Jerome Tang back to Baylor. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, that's really hard to tell if that's going to be the case with it, but anyway, tomorrow could be really weird. So, but anyway, let's get back to, K-State not wanting to pay $18.6 million buyout to Jerome Tang. Again, just a quick recap of my thought about this. I mean, to me, this is K-State. This is business. Dug themselves a hole with the buyout. Certainly nobody would want to pay that buyout. Jerome Tang, in a way, shooting himself in the foot with that post-game press conference after the Cincinnati game, talking to White on the radio show. K-State felt they could use that for a for-cause firing. And now we move on to what could be an ugly result to K-State versus Jerome Tang on this $18.6 million buyout, which Jerome Tang didn't waste any time. I mean, he's putting out, through his lawyers, I'm sure, statements to the national media. I don't know if they've done the thing on SportsCenter yet. I'm sure K-State's taken a shellacking from the national media. They already have already from a lot of people. The one thing I'm not really here to say, they're right or they're wrong necessarily with their opinions. I understand some of their opinions. I just don't think they fully understand this situation. What I don't like is those saying that the K-State job now is tarnished, black eye, ruined, that who would want to take this job after this whole story. I think that's absolutely ridiculous and to me doesn't make any sense because this is K-State Jerome Tang issue. This has nothing to do with a future head coach. And look at the last handful of coaches K-State's had. They've had Elite Eights. They've had Big 12 championships. And with Jerome Tang, he has had a bankroll, a budget that most head coaches around this country wish they have at least to compete at the highest level of college basketball. And K-State is going to attract some of the best suitors for this job. There's going to be people that want to have this job. This is a good job. This is a great job, in my opinion. When K-State basketball is even halfway decent, the people are showing up. They're there to support. The Octagon of Doom is one of the toughest places to play in America. There are coaches that are going to want this job, no doubt, despite what's currently taking place with Jerome Tang versus K-State. That's how I'm going to continue to phrase this. This is very people's court, the people versus Jerome Tang, or whatever, however you want to phrase this. That's now where we're at. And again, I think this could get ugly. K-State wants to settle this. There's no doubt about that. K-State isn't expecting to pay $0. I would be shocked if they're thinking right now, man, that Jerome Tang totally bailed us out with that press conference. Bailed us out. We are scot-free. We don't have to pay a single dime. Whew. Man, we're thinking for a second, how the hell are we going to be able to afford $18.6 million? Thank you, Jerome Tang, for screwing up. No, that's not the case whatsoever. They're hoping best case scenario, some sort of settlement, I would imagine. But however, does Jerome Tang now have some extra ammo because of what has taken place as of recent? I'm just kind of spitballing here. I'm throwing out these potential things here because I don't know if they would or not. But I'm just they are lingering in my mind. Because if I'm Jerome Tang's lawyers, I'm liking some of these things. There's three things I want to point out here. One, Jerome Tang coached the Houston game. Despite the ball already rolling on, thinking about moving on from coach because of these post-game comments, Gene Taylor and Jerome Tang, they had conversations after that press conference. But he still coached the Houston game, which was very interesting to me. Now that we know the timeline of the way things have occurred, even though Gene Taylor says, the ball really got rolling, the decision being made while that game was going on is honestly very crazy to me. Jerome Tang never had to go back in front of the media and roll back what he said because, and this is some of the other national criticism of, why didn't Jerome Tang apologize for what he said? Things like that. The second thing is Gene Taylor actually having a press conference after the firing. And maybe this just was to clarify to the media after the Manhattan Mercury, the first report, and they have been hitting home runs with these first report headlines from Colin Klein to now this Gene Taylor firing, that there was still the press conference from Gene. I don't know if it was just to clarify that it was a for firing cause, but there was no an official statement on a podium, standing on a podium or at a table or whatever, to read to the media, and then no questions, we move on. I just didn't like it because, Gene was now free to just, in a very fresh situation, get potentially some tough questions from the media. And I didn't know, Gene, I don't know if he was necessarily prepared to answer everything. He had to be very careful about what he said. And then the number one thing I did not like about what has happened since is today the Manhattan Mercury put out again another fantastic article. K-State offered Jerome Tang the chance to coach out the rest of the season. Now this is pretty major. And Gene's done this before where, look, we're going to allow you to coach the rest of the year, but you got to resign and you got to take without money being an exact amount being thrown out there, some sort of a less of a buyout compared to the full buyout. Jerome Tang, he thought about it. Give me 5 o'clock. Let me get back to you. Let me talk to my lawyers. Both sides are talking to the lawyers. That got extended to 6 o'clock. And then, to me, the way I picture this is basically Jerome Tang came back, gave the double birds to Gene Taylor, and said, how about I coach the rest of the year and you give me my full buyout? So K-State allowed Jerome Tang to continue coaching, tried to have a very careful press conference, but then offered Jerome Tang, look, if this was such a serious thing that we could fire this guy immediately for cause, but we would have been okay with you to finish out the rest of the season. That part of it I wish was never said to benefit K-State. Because, again, I get the business side of this. You don't want to spend all this money on a buyout. Coach Tang said some things he shouldn't have said. But K-State, I don't think they should have offered to allow him to coach the rest of the year. Was maybe a little bit too friendly to a coach that you're going to fire. It was basically, look, we could give you the rest of this season. You resign. You take less of a buyout as a bargaining tool. Or you're just gone now and we fire you for cause. Maybe just too much of a hand was shown. Like if this is a poker game, there was a lack of a poker face. You're showing your hand a little bit. I don't know if that works for Coach Tang. I don't know if this is good for his camp or not. But I'm throwing it out there as a possibility I probably wouldn't have said that if I was K-State. So this is just the beginning of what could be weeks, months of a dragged out $18.6 million just sitting there. Jerome Tang is going to get something. Could he get all of that? I'm not a lawyer full time, and I can't give you that answer. And I'm just raising some questions that on K-State's side, I just wonder what could happen based on what has been said and what has been shared since the firing of Jerome Tang. Tim Everson will join me tomorrow. We're going to make up a few things from Wildcat Insider we didn't have today, including the voice of the Cats, Wyatt Thompson, tomorrow. We'll wrap up the Wildcat Insider here on KMAN.
This is Wildcat Insider. Wildcat Insider, an exclusive presentation of the flagship station of the K-State Sports Network. News Radio 1350, KMAN. News, sports, weather. Your source for information 24/7. This is News Radio, KMAN, Manhattan. This is SportsCenter.
I'm Christine Lisi. Cameron Boozer, one of the projected top 3 picks in June's NBA draft, set to lead number 3 Duke against Syracuse in the opener of a men's college basketball doubleheader. Tip-off shortly on ESPN. Boozer, averaging almost 23 points a game, leads the ACC, is 5th in Division I scoring. Doubleheader caps off with number 2 Houston visiting number 6 Iowa State, featuring 2 of the country's top defenses. Nearly 4 years after acquiring Tyreek Hill in an NFL blockbuster trade from the Chiefs, the Dolphins released the soon-to-be 32-year-old receiver. Hill, one of the NFL's most productive receivers a couple of years ago, missed most of last season with a dislocated knee and torn ACL. ESPN NFL analyst Mina Kimes.
There's a lot of questions around Hill right now. 32 years old, or going to be 32 next season, coming off of the ACL. Game is really predicated on elite speed, so there's questions about whether or not he'll be able to hit that speed moving forward as he ages, obviously, brings some baggage